change the bottom thing, shouldn't we, really?
Yes, we should definitely change the bottom thing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of Build on Open Source, the final episode of 2022. Derek, hello.
Yes. Hi, Rick. Last episode of the year.
Yes, I know. I'm so sorry. If you see me sniffle, that's why. It's been really great so far. I mean, we've had 8 episodes, and before we kind of start, Derek, what have been your highlights, so far of the, of 2022 when it comes to building open source?
Yeah, Rick. So 2022, I can't believe it's over. It's been quite the year. So the highlights for me, probably the first highlight would be the fact that we got back in person. So
yeah,
I know you and I have just back what seems just came back from Vegas. So we had our first in-person reInvent for a number of years, which was great. It really was. I'm sure you feel the same.
Totally.
Meeting people and just doing shows from reInvent, which is cool. And one of the shows that we did was an open source show, which is also a highlight for me. Obviously, this show, I love doing this show with you. And so we had a guest, not only somebody who we've had on our show here, but also got invited to talk at reInvent on the Build On Live show. So that was Ian Mackay, who is from Sydney in Australia. So I look after Australia,
nice.
the Australian DA. So that was great just to see Ian. Ian's a bit of a legend.
He is totally. And I think that was one of the most viewed shows, wasn't it? So it's like it was great to see the Build On Live at reInvent and see him there. So that was pretty awesome. Yeah, and actually that's a good segue into my highlight, because I think for me, what surprised me, we've only done 8 episodes this year, and we're planning to come back in 2023 with more episodes. It'll be bigger, and better and big, So for me, one of the surprises and one of the things I enjoyed was that we didn't expect that we were going to have guests every week. We kind of thought that we would go through the projects and we would do some code. We did, I think the first episode, we actually did some code.
I wrote code and you wrote code. Thank goodness.
Wow. Exactly. Yeah.
And so we watched.
I think it. Yeah, exactly. And it worked. Well, both yours worked. I think mine didn't work quite as well as yours, but never mind. So I think what surprised me was that, we kept having loads of guests want to come on. And that's been, for me, the highlight. I love when guests comes on. And that's a really good segue into actually kind of what you've got planned on for you today. So as it's the last show of 2022, we're going to start off with a roundup of the latest open source projects coming up. Then we're going to segue into our special guest this week, Rand Eisenberg, AWS community builder, who's going to be talking about some of his open source projects, which I'm really excited about. I think that you're going to really enjoy what he's got to talk about. And cool. Also because it's the last show of this year and because it's festive and we've got, we've come with hats and tinsel and stuff. We've got a raffle. We've got stuff to give away. I've got T-shirts. Okay, I've got an open source AWS T-shirt. I've got an S3 bucket hat. I've got,
my goodness,
probably one of the kind of the best pieces of swag. The DevOps is not dead T-shirt. I've got one of these. So I've also got. So that's a catch, that one. Not very many of the people have got that, so that's a bit of a good one. And I've also got an open source medal challenge coin to give away, as well as the a signed poster from All Things Open. So we've got the raffle coming up, so don't miss that.
You're like Santa. You're Santa.
I am like Santa. I'm giving things away, So all those kind of sort of good open source builders, out there who want to take part. So watch out for the raffle coming up later on today. So awesome. I think Derek. We've brought the bell back. So this is the transition control for Derek. So Derek, transition, please.
The bell.
Yes, there we go. So everyone, Derek, you shared, I think earlier on, this show is really kind of driven by people who are watching. If you have got open source projects you want us to talk about, then please, get in contact, use the comments. But what we're going to do over the next sort of 10, 15 minutes is go through the current and the previous open source newsletters. So this one is currently going to be published on Monday. It's got some really cool new projects. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to go through some of the highlights. The first thing, though, because it's the last newsletter of 2022, you can't. I think that's one of the things. At the end of the year, you always see these TV programs, right? That show the best of 2020, the best 5 TV programs, or best adverts, or best music videos, right? So, of course, I've got to do the same thing, right? So, this is the best, or not best, but these are the most popular projects. So, I'm sharing this in the newsletter because some of you might not have read all of the newsletters, and so this is your chance really to have a look at this list. Oh, you have? Okay, well done. I thought you might, Derek. Check them out because they're all awesome projects, and obviously they have appealed to a large number of folks who tune into the newsletter and tune into the show. Okay, so that's the first thing to draw people's attention to. We've got a top 15. I think it's a top 15. My counting skills this early in the morning are not so good, but yeah. So some of you might know, some of you might not know. Okay, so from there, let's look at actually one of the new projects. The first one is hard. I'm not quite sure how to say this. Is it Harden EKS or Hardnex? Hardy-Nex?
I read it Hardnex. Hardened-Nex.
Yeah.
Once I read it, I just went, oh, nice name, but also very nice graphics. Nice little bit of art.
Indeed.
I like that.
So exactly. And what this project does, okay, is if you're running Kubernetes via Amazon EKS, then allows you to run this tool and check to make sure that you are following best practices for EKS. Now, I'm not sure if those best practices are well architected. I haven't dived deeper yet into the project. I've got a couple of EKS clusters that I'm currently playing around with, so I'm going to run it and test it on that. But it's still a very handy tool with nice visualization. So, yeah, we like this one. Although we still want to know how to call it, what to call it.
Hardnex.
Hardy-Nex is what I'm going to call it.
Hardnex. Harden EKS.
Yes. So next one is the Lambda snapshot Java rules. Well, that's easy for me to say.
Oh, yeah, go on.
AWS Lambda snapshot. I can't say it. Snapshot, snap start. That's a tongue twister.
It is. AWS Lambda snap start Java rules.
So you said it straight off. You see, well done. I applaud you. That gets a bell ring. Well done. So what is it though? What is this project? Well, okay. So what it is that for folks who didn't or haven't heard this announcement, where were you? At reInvent, we introduced this new capability in Lambda that allows you to drastically reduce your cold start times for Java Lambda functions. Okay. Now, what I didn't know at the time is that it's not you have to make sure that your Java code can work with this, right? So what this is a set of rules you can implement in one of the very popular open source kind of static analysis tools that lets you pre-check to make sure that your Lambda function is going to work with Snapstart. Snapstart, exactly. Yeah. So I think that's pretty cool. So definitely, if you're experimenting with Snapstart, getting better, then check this out. Next one. Who isn't talking about ChatGPT? Derek, are you talking about
pretty much everybody in the whole world is ChatGPT.
Everyone in the whole world. Have you tried it?
Yes. It's like
I've tried it. I've tried it to create code, simple code, right? Either like create me a quick Python script to upload files to S3, and I've been amazed by it, right? Well, anyway, someone has come up with this new open source project tool that allows you to create Terraform. Okay, so to create terrific or terrifying Terraform.
Terraform. Yes,
exactly. I've not tried this yet, but I'm going to try it.
The best use I've heard so far of ChatGPT, apart from this, of course, was to do your annual performance appraisal.
Oh my gosh. I can imagine our managers now, Derek, right? Seeing all this text, right? And it all sounding very similar. Damn. That's a good well done, whoever came up with that use case. Well done.
Yeah, it was good.
Okay, so moving on to the next project. Okay, we've got AWS TFS Prowler Fargates. Now, Prowler is an open source project that allows you to do a security assessment of your AWS environments. You can run it anywhere you want. But this is a really nice solution that effectively allows you to run it via AWS Fargate. So it takes care of running and setting everything up for you. So I like this, and it's customizable as well, and it produces the report in an S3 bucket. So if you haven't or wanted to explore with Prowler, then why not try this out? It's Terraform, so allows you to really easily set this up. Have you used or heard of Prowler before, Derek?
No, I haven't. But I'm just thinking those last two projects you could use together, couldn't you?
Oh yes, very nice.
Yeah,
exactly. Good point. Yeah,
did that on purpose.
Yeah, well, there may be some linkage going on there.
Yeah, nice.
I'm not going to claim credit. Okay, so last project, we got more projects, but the last one I want to highlight really is this IoT Greengrass painless installer, which allows you very easily to deploy Greengrass on devices just by integrating a Cognito user, right? So rather than having to worry about AWS credentials, it allows you to integrate just Cognito, which means you could also integrate with Cognito, something like Active Directory if you're using that. So allows you to very easily deploy Greengrass without having to have any knowledge or access to AWS, which I think is pretty cool. And it's a customizable solution. So I really like that. So there's lots of other projects. So, but I'll leave you to explore that. I want to go through last week's newsletter because there's a couple of Corker projects on this one as well.
Yep.
So this one is available for everyone to view. So the first one is the PGL TLE, right, which is the Trusted Language Extensions, which we launched at reInvent. It was actually in one of the keynotes. And what this actually is a really cool open source project you can use anywhere. You can use it in your own Postgres environments. You don't have to use it on RDS or Aura. And it allows you effectively to create effectively a kind of a whitelisting, an allow listing. Sorry, let's get our terminology right. We're not allowed to use that word anymore.
No.
So that we to create effectively allow lists that help you improve the security of your Postgres environments. Okay, so I think that's a really cool sort of project that helps you raise the bar of security in your Postgres environments, and really excited to see what people are doing with it. So if you are exploring this project or using it, and I'd love to hear from you. Because I want to experiment with it in the new year, so I'd love to find out what other people are doing with it. Okay. Yeah. So next project is EKS Node Viewer. So again, this one is easier to pronounce. So the other one,
no snapshot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this one, Justin Garrison, who's one of the DAs in the containers team, he shared a little TikTok of him running it. Okay, and I really liked it. But it allows you to really easily visualize what's going on within your cluster, and it's very graphical. So who doesn't like graphical CLI tools? I do. I know you do, Derek. So
I'm a big fan.
Exactly. So I think that's a really cool project. So if you're running kind of EKS environments, then definitely check this out, and check out the video from Justin. It's pretty neat.
Yep.
Next project, Function Clarity. So this is an interesting one. Okay, so this allows you to effectively sign your Lambda functions to improve the security, which I think that's kind of like a nice new layer that you can have, for especially highly regulated or environments where you want to have that high level of security, right? So this is not a tool plus also a blog post that shows you how to use it as well. So if you're looking at how to implement higher bar security within your serverless environments, then definitely check this out. I think it's a very interesting project from the company that's behind it.
Yeah, I like the name too.
Now,
Function Clarity.
Yes, exactly. Now, I'm not sure what to make of this project, Eric. I'm not sure if you saw this one, Dyna53.
I did.
So you did. So we've had Alvaro Hernandez on the show before, great guy, and he's created this new project, this killer service called Dyna53, which allows you to effectively use Route 53 as a database, which using, I think, DynamoDB kind of like API. Yeah, so effectively, you no longer need to use DynamoDB. Why not use Route 53 instead?
What wasn't in the beginning of the year? Didn't we have a bit of a rant about that? Didn't Mr. Corey Quinn get started on that one?
So. I think so. Well, now it's a possibility. So, Alvaro, we applaud you. We applaud your creativity.
it can be done.
It's very, yeah, it's pretty interesting, and I think I certainly enjoyed and had a smile when I saw this project. There are more other projects. So there's a Dynamo Mass Migrations, which allows you to very quickly migrate. All the code is open source. I'm not going to go through all of them, Derek, because we've got time, but make sure you check all these other projects which I'm scrolling through very, very quickly.
I'll post
This
all the links
got a
up.
lot of traction. This visual asset management one was one of the most viewed projects last week. So obviously this has caught everyone's attention. I'm not particularly so familiar with this particular space of managing digital assets, but obviously some of you are who are watchers. So definitely, if you weren't aware of that and you do that as your job, then check this project out. So I think, Derek, with that, I think we're ready for the next segment.
Oh, hold on. No. I'm not ready, but I will be ready. Hold on. I was doing links at the same time. Hold on. And I need the bell. Yeah. Stop touching, Ricardo. Stop touching the button.
It was. I tell you what. Sorry about that, Ran. It wasn't me. It was Grinch. The Grinch is in the house.
Hi guys.
Hey, I'm loving the hat, Ran. Loving the hat.
No,
yeah, I found it somewhere in the house. Yeah.
So welcome to the show, Ran Eisenberg. Do you want to share and introduce yourself to people who are watching?
Yeah. So my name is Ran Eisenberg. I'm from Israel. I'm a principal software architect at CyberArk, an AWS community builder, and I'm the owner and the main blogger of the serverless blog runthebuilder.cloud.
Cool, great, and very nice to have you on the show. So, what are you going to be sharing with us today?
So today we're going to be talking about serverless. So none of these EKS and containers or EC2s, just plain serverless.
Nice. Well, we like serverless. We very much like serverless, don't we? So but before we show us anything, okay, there is one thing that we have to start the show off, and this is going to determine how well this show goes.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
This is dun the Tech Pizza Challenge. So we ask all our guests, when you go into a No, you don't want to hear me sing. I tell you what, a funny reInvent story. The open source team and myself, we went to a karaoke bar during reInvent. And this is a true story. And the song that we most enjoyed was me singing Rammstein. And luckily, I think there is no video footage of that anywhere. But anyway, so you don't want to hear me sing. But, man, you go into your favorite pizza emporium, you ask for pizza. Do you have pineapple on it? Or do you not have pineapple on it? We want to know what does Ran say?
Well, pineapples are fine, but then I need to have ham as well.
Of course.
That's
the magical duo.
You hear then? You are a friend. Yeah. Well done.
Yeah.
Yay!
Welcome, friend.
Welcome, friend. Right. This is going to go so much better now. So that was the most important thing. So Ran, you are going to show us about your open source project, which is tell us more about it.
Yeah, so it's called the AWS Lambda Handler Cookbook, which is a pretty long name, to be honest. But essentially, it's a serverless service template in Python, and it really helps people to get started with serverless services. Because as you know, starting a serverless service can be a bit overwhelming because you need to figure out many questions and challenges that have nothing to do with a business domain. You need to understand how to deploy to the cloud, what infrastructure as code to use, framework to use, how to handle testing of serverless functions, how to handle logging, observability, testing, metrics, how to write Lambda handlers, what are the best practices for writing them, how to write your CI/CD pipeline. There's many things that you need to figure out because before you can really start writing the business domain. So my aim is to really help people reduce the cognitive load and just focus on what matters most, their business domain. And I created a project that allows you to do that in 3 simple clicks. So you could get started with sort of 3 clicks.
Like that.
It used to be 2 clicks, to be honest, but then GitHub had to add another click into their system. So now it's 3, but it's still, I think, rather easy.
Well, that sounds really interesting.
Sounds
So,
better.
enough talking. Let's show us what
Yeah.
show us what this is then. What this looks like.
Okay, let me
Derek, this
share
time
my
I'm not going to
screen.
touch the screen. I will let you have your time. Right. I think I
Um,
must have been overwhelmed by the Grinch spirit then. So
Yeah, you just kept clicking things and clicking things and clicking
did.
things, and yeah, there
Right.
we are.
Can we see
There
your
are,
screen?
Ran.
So
There's your screen. We can see it.
Yeah, okay. So this is the AWS Lambda Handler Cookbook. And like I said, it's a template. It's not a package. It's not something that you expand. So you click on use this template, create a new repository. You choose your repository name, whatever you want, and then you create the repository from template. So that's 3 clicks. And then you can git clone the project. So before I jump into the code, let's take a look at the documentation so you fully understand
we like
what's
documentation,
going
Ran.
on there.
We like good documentation.
Yeah.
As long as
So
there's
one of my
pastel colors on it. Pastel
yeah.
colors.
So one of the things that I've learned from working with the AWS Power Tools team, I've contributed a couple of utilities to their amazing repository, is that developer experience matters. And part of the developer experience is good documentation. So the best feature of this documentation, in my eyes, is the dark mode.
Yeah, there we go.
So simple, isn't it? And look, it's elegant. So Ran, I'm loving the logo. Ran the Builder. That is just such a great. You know, we have a kids show here called Bob the Builder. So
yeah, I know we have it too.
Any relation?
Yeah.
Ran Builder.
Ran's like the nerdy Bob the Builder.
yeah, like the building virtual buildings, I guess. When I got accepted into the AWS Community Builders program, people at work started calling me the Builder. It's like it became like some sort of a joke, I guess. And as I started writing blog posts about serverless and best practices, and at some point I wanted to start like my own brand and my own website. And somebody said, "Hey, why don't you just call it Run the Builder? You know, embrace the nickname." So I said, "You know what? I'll go for it. Sure, I'll just add the cute logo with the construction helmet and just embrace."
Did you draw that yourself? Did you draw the little icon of yourself with the Builder helmet?
I'm using Wix.
Yep.
So they have like a logo helper builder, so I designed it there. So
cool.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if it's a cyclist or a builder.
Yeah, I was going cyclist. Yeah.
Do you cycle, Ran? Do you cycle? It's an important question because Eric and myself are keen cyclists.
Sorry.
Never mind, I won't hold it against you.
Yeah, no, got the pineapple. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
Well, I play the guitar if it's any better.
Yeah, that's way cooler than cycling. That's for sure.
It depends on how well you play. Anyway, the solution is I present you the serverless service, the order service. So once you clone the project, the project itself is an order service. You have an API gateway that accepts HTTP post requests to /API/orders. It triggers a Lambda function, and it uses a dynamic configuration and feature flags from app-config, and it saves the order data to the Amazon DynamoDB table, and then it returns back the response. I created the order, thank you, stuff like that. So it's a very simple project, and it's meant to be simple, but so it's easy to expand and write your own code. But as you can see, it has several features, and the feature is starting that you're getting a Python serverless service with the recommended file structure, with all the layer segregation, and I'll show that later on. I chose CDK, AWS CDK, as the infrastructure as code framework. It allows you to write code in Python, and it synthesizes it into a CloudFormation template, and then it handles the deployment for you. And I'm really enjoy. I think it's an amazing utility to write resources for AWS, to write infrastructure, and it's very easy to use in my eyes.
Yeah, I agree.
So I
The
use
one
CDK.
The
Yeah.
one question, Rand, that would probably have is around CDK, because most people know that CDK supports more than one language. So it supports
Yeah.
quite a few,
Yeah.
other than
Yeah, it's true.
Python. So did you ever think about other languages when you're building this, or you're quite happy just to do the Python angle?
So, well, I'm just writing what I'm used for.
Yep.
Python is very popular for Lambda, and I'm using Python at my work, so it was easier for me to do that. But yeah, I mean, there should be other variations of this project in other languages too. But I chose Python. That's because I'm
There we go.
I'm just
Go with what you
familiar
know.
with Python.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you so people watching, if you like what you're seeing, and you're a TypeScript or a Java developer, why not get in contact with Ran about maybe creating other language versions of this project, right? You know, we could have the Lambda cookbook for Java, for TypeScript, for whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
sharp.
and we should have. Yeah, we should have. It shouldn't be. When I started 3 years ago, I think over 3 years now, to learn serverless, I didn't know anything about serverless, and it was really hard at the beginning because we needed to understand all these questions and all these best practices. And having such a project, I think it's like a cheat code, because it can now we have a more clear understanding of how I think you should work. And you can just focus on, okay, so I have this, I can just extend the code, I can add more resources, and I got all the other things figured out. So it just helps you to focus. And we saw it internally at CyberArk. We have a similar template for onboarding new teams to serverless, and it helps to really reduce the time to move teams from even using C++, writing services in C++ on-premise solutions, to write serverless SaaS applications in Python. In one case, in just 4 months, based on the template that we had internally, they were able to bring a product to customers, which is, I think, pretty amazing. So the template works, and I realized again. Sorry.
So your internal builders are loving this project of yours.
Yeah. So not exactly. And internally, we're using a variation of this. The internal project was first, and we use many of the utilities here, like AWS Lambda Power Tools, all the best practices. It's a slight variation because we have some internal utilities, but once I realized that it's very powerful, I just decided to create an open source version of it without CyberArk code and proprietary solutions and SDK. So it's pure open source solution, and everybody can use it.
Awesome, love it.
Okay, so the other thing that you're getting is a CI/CD pipeline, and once you create a branch or a pull request, it runs on GitHub Actions. It has linters, complexity checks, style formatters, all the bells and whistles that you want for Python, and it actually deploys to AWS and runs all the tests with code coverage and all the things that you need to have in a pipeline. The Lambda handlers themselves, they use we use AWS Lambda Power Tools, which is a repository that basically, I think, describes or provides you utilities of really best practices or how you should use Lambda functions in the cloud. And Lambda Power Tools also has variations in other languages too, but Python is the more advanced version. It has the more utilities, and I'm a big fan of AWS Lambda Power Tools.
I would go even further, Rand. If you're building Lambda functions and you're not using Lambda Power Tools, then you're missing out big time on a lot of efficiencies.
I agree.
I'll put the link in
the
chat.
Totally. And actually, we had Hator come up do one of talks at the open source track at reInvent, and he actually talked about the journey to I think it was a million downloads.
10 million downloads. Yeah. I saw the talk. Great talk.
Yeah, it's a great talk. Definitely worth, if you want to know more about what it takes to open source a project and to drive and some of the the ups and downs. It's the must see talk for me. And again, in previous episodes of the newsletter, I share links to the talk, so make sure you check that out.
Yeah, and just to expand on that, I've learned a lot from Hator and his team. many of the best practices, even the pipeline tools. I didn't know that there were complexity checks, but they had it on the Power Tools pipeline, and I know it because it failed my PR that I wanted to create, and then I really had to understand what it does. And we actually use it now in our pipeline in CyberArk because it's such a great utility. And this documentation is also created by the same open source utilities that the Power Tools use. So I've learned a lot from that repository and from the team, and they've really been amazing to work with. So other than the Lambda Power Tools that we're going to see, we have unit test integration and end-to-end tests. And you have the ability to run the integration tests in the IDE itself. So you can have like breakpoints in your Lambda code, and you can actually interact with AWS accounts and your resources and see it in real time. I don't believe in mocking. I think you should use as much as possible the real thing. So this project really allows you to do that.
Yeah.
And
well, mocking, you end up necessarily rewriting the whole thing usually when you try to create mock. So I'm 100% agreement of that philosophy. I'm interested in everybody else's views because it's quite contentious.
I mean, that's an issue, isn't it? I'm going to declare my interest in mocking. Right, I'm not saying that you should always mock, but I think it's always in the 33 years where I've been doing this. Right, you have this debate. One week mocking is hot, the next week it's not. Right, well that rhymes. You know, it's my mocking rap.
so
I drinking eggnog.
But I think but I think the problem is it's one of those. It depends, right? So I don't think that mocking is bad necessarily, but I do think if you can not do it and go directly, then there's value, because especially when you've got highly changing services, right? I think that's where, you know, I think you really need to think carefully about that, because it's really difficult. Unless if you've got more well-established, stable internal systems, right? Those are easier to mock, right?
I've had such cases in Python. You have a famous AWS mocking utility called Moto, like Moto Boto, you know.
Oh, wow.
The imagination just boom. Wow.
And we've had cases where it just didn't really correlate to the actual service. But I think that mocking does have a place where you want to simulate DynamoDB put table failure, right? It doesn't fail. It has like 99.999% SLA. So I want to mock what happens if my handler will fail to put the item in the table. So I can do that in my integration tests with mocking. So I can simulate all sorts of errors, but I want to work with the real resource as much as possible. So regarding the serverless best practices, I'm touching about logging, tracing with X-ray for performance monitoring, metrics in CloudWatch, custom metrics, environment variables. I'm going to explain that later. Input validation and app config for dynamic configuration feature flags that allow you to change the behavior of your service without redeploying your Lambda, which is an advanced topic, but I think that at some point every production-ready Lambda service just needs to have. And when you open the pages, you can see like a summary of the concept, like JSON logging, why you should use JSON logging, why it's so important, how you do that, how you do it in the code, and you can read more about it in my blog. So this project kind of started like a complementary code to my blog series about best practices for Lambda, and then I just decided to expand it and add the pipeline and make file and just make it a quick serverless service. So that's how it started. I think
joining the stream, Ran is talking about his project, the AWS Lambda cookbook. He's walking us through the project, and effectively, Ran, what I've heard from you so far, okay, is this project allows you to very, very quickly fork your project and create a project based on effectively best practices, right? And using things like Lambda Power Tools, but also observability, security, all these CI/CD and automation, all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. And it should be easy to develop with. There's a make file that you can use to simulate every action in the pipeline. So if something fails, you can run it in your IDE. And there's also a makefile command called make PR, which just lints all your code, fixes all the things that you need, and then you can push your code to the branch, to GitHub, and you know that it's going to work.
So, Ran, you've mentioned the C word code quite a few times now. Are we going to see some?
Yeah. That's a good point.
Good. Just
So-
checking.
Yeah. So do you see my VS Code
Yep.
Yes,
console?
we do.
Okay.
Beautiful.
So,
VS Code in dark mode as well. Very nice.
Yeah, so I'm not going to go back to the documentation, but there's a getting started page there. So you're going to have to believe me. And it says what you need to have installed, like Docker and CDK and pipenv and all sorts of configurations. So once you have that set up in your environment, you're going to type pipenv shell, which is
Just
going to...
Ran, before we begin, so what we're seeing here is your VS Code. This is where you've done the Git clone, right? Of that.
Yeah. I did the Git clone, and now I've opened the project locally, and I want to deploy the project and see if it really works like I promised, right? So we created the virtual environment for the Python, and we're going to type make dev, and that's going to install all my dependencies and make my setup work. So once that's installing,
when you
let's
say
take a look.
dependencies of the project, as opposed to dependencies that you mentioned before around Docker and all that kind of stuff, right? I'm assuming it's just those.
Yeah, Docker, you need to have Docker installed in your machine. That's the dependencies of the project itself. There's a pip file down here below with Power Tools and Pydantic and Moto3 and CDK, whatever. So it installs whatever it needs to install. And now we're ready. So now I can just write make deploy. And this is going to take there's the CDK folder here. And this is the CDK project. There are basically three important folders that you should be aware of. There's the CDK folder, which holds the CDK project called my service. And it's a CDK stack with all the resources that we saw, the DynamoDB table, the app config configuration, and the Lambda itself, the Lambda layers, all the resources all combined together with the Lambda role, all the things that it needs to do. There's the service, which is basically the business logic, right? Where you actually write the business domain code, and you have the handlers. I have my Lambda handler, the entry point to my service. If there's an event that comes to the API gateway, the API gateway is going to trigger and start a Lambda handler, a Lambda function. And there's the entry function of my code where I get my input and start processing the order. And there's the tasks. And like I said, there's unit test, integration, and end-to-end. And end-to-end, I also have the infrastructure test, which is unique for CDK. I can assert, before I deploy and mess up my environment, I can assert that the template, the CloudFormation template that I'm about to deploy, has some main resources that I expect to exist. I mean, you can have some sort of a bug that maybe deletes your configuration or deletes an environment variable or deletes API gateway or an SSM parameter. You can validate that these crucial resources always exist, so you don't deploy and make some havoc in your environment. And there's also just one last comment. There's the CDK nag, which is like a similar. You've shown the CFN nag in your top 15 projects. So CDK nag is the CDK version of that, and it checks that you have no security issues or like overly permissive roles in your configuration in your CDK.
I didn't know that one. I didn't know that.
What I was going to say, Ran, is I've seen a lot of projects in my time, but not many have such a comprehensive suite of tests inside them. So that's really, really good stuff there that you've built.
Thank you. So just forgot about I want to actually deploy the thing, and because it takes some time.
These things happen.
Yeah. So let's type make deploy, and if you have your CDK configured with all the environment variables and all the configuration, it should work. So what it does is it spins up. I'm using, again, proper CDK, nothing fancy or custom. It spins up a Docker container on my machine, and it builds the Lambda layer that I'm using, and now it publishes it to S3. and it's going to start to build the CloudFormation template, and I asked it to automatically deploy it to my account.
Okay.
So let's take a look briefly. Yeah, it's already started to create the CloudFormation stack, as you can see. So let's see what we have in the stack. So we have an API construct. A CDK construct is essentially, it's a class that holds resources that have connections between them, and it can be a logical like a logical unit of your service. Here I have an API, so I call it the API, which is essentially the API gateway, the Lambda, its roles, its all configurations, and the DynamoDB table all together in one unit. And constructs I can also share. I can give this file to other people in my company, or to the Construct Hub on AWS, and everybody can have the same resources deployed to their accounts very easily. So if I jump into the API construct, I can see that it's very short. I mean, you have each function creates a resource, and in this one, I'm creating the DynamoDB. So in CDK, DynamoDB creation is just one line. Well, kinda. I mean, it's one line over several lines, I guess. But it's a one function call. It's one class. And as you can see, I'm giving the table a name. I define the partition key, order ID. It's an order service, if you recall. The billing mode, the backups, the point-in-time backup is mandatory for production. It can really save your ass. And the removal policy in production, you shouldn't have this on destroy, but I'm using it on my personal account, so I want stacks to be removed. And the same matter, I can build my Lambda role, and my tip for you is always to use the inline policies, because then you can really see what permissions you're giving. In CDK, there's a cool option to abstract these. You can have objects grant other objects with functions. They can grant permissions, and it can be a bit confusing. You can give more permissions that you really need, but in this way, you can really see what permissions you're giving. I can see that I'm giving the DynamoDB put item on. I'm allowing Balam to do that, but only on my table, right? This is the ARN of my table, only on this resource. So you have to be very specific. So in the same manner, we build the entire Lambda and deploy it. So the Lambda is deployed, and I want to show you. So it really depends on how much time you want me to go babble on this, because I can go on and on and on. But I do want to show you the handler.
We've got about 5 more minutes, Ran.
Okay, so I'll do it quickly. So we're not gonna deep dive into the whole best practices here, but as you can see, we're using the Lambda Power Tools. We have the logger, the metrics, the tracing. It's all built in. We're parsing the input validation with the parser, which basically means, hey, I'm expecting an API gateway event. Please parse it and return me from that my input. This is the model of my input, how it should look like, which is doesn't open. Does it open? VS Code bugs for the win.
It's thinking about it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know where it is. So here it is. It's a customer name, and you have the order. That's the body of the response of the request that each customer makes. And here you can see that I defined both the value constraints. This needs to be a positive integer, so also the type, and also the value constraints. And the customer name needs to be a non-empty string up to 20 characters. So again, I have lots of blogs around this and how it should work and why. And here you can see that the handler calls the internal layers of the code. Please handle the create request, gives them the input, and expects an output, and eventually returns back the output. So the handler, I know people like to write all the logic in the handler. Please don't do that. Please use good practices and architecture practices to have different layers, and each part of the code have one responsibility. And since our deployment is finished, I want to show you the cool thing about our testing. So integration tests, they require you to deploy the code. So let's see what I do here. So here, essentially, since the Lambda handler expects an API gateway type of event, I have a helper function to generate the API gateway event, and I'm building it like all the input that it's supposed to do, and I'm triggering the handler in the IDE itself. So I've already added breakpoints to the code, and if I were to debug this, the moment of truth, let's see if everything is okay. Right, so as you can see, I'm now inside. At the beginning of the handler, I've passed the, I have the environment variables, the validation, and check that everything, that my static configuration is okay. And you can see I have an event here, and it's the post method. And you can see it says customer name, run the builder, order count. Run the builder wants to buy five items. So now I can continue and debug my code, and let's jump forward. This is the code that handles the DynamoDB call. So so I'm in my IDE, and I'm about to insert an item to my real DynamoDB table. And if there's an error, I can catch it. I can literally see the error in my eyes here with the client error. I can properly debug and have a full experience of how to really work with Lambda. So that's much better than any mocking. So let's see if my code really works. Yes, it does. So we've created an order, and the test is completed. So in the same manner, you can do the other test. I simulated here use cases where I'm mocking some sorts of errors in the DynamoDB, like we said, with the mocking, and I expect to have an internal server error returned back to me. So just to show you how I expect people to really work with tests and work with mocking. That's it in a nutshell. Again, I can go on and in each one of those utilities.
And actually, one of the things that I've seen when speaking to open source builders is that actually testing is often the way that a lot of projects can scale contributions to their project, right? Because it's tricky if you're a single developer or a small group of developers, and you're desperate for more people to join your project and contribute. Making sure you've got the right test coverage and test and quality of tests is super important to make sure that anyone can pick the project up and actually confidently start contributing it, right? So I think that tests are often an unsung hero. So I really like the level of detail you've showed here.
What about Ran? Any tips for anybody starting out projects? What do you know now? What would you share if there's a tip to anybody else thinking about starting something like this?
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, you should have high test coverage, because people want to gain confidence that your code really works and it gets the job done. So high coverage. I've implemented CodeCov. It's like an open source utility that scans each PR and tells you if you have high coverage or not, and fails my PRs if I messed up. Developer experience is super crucial. So it should be easy to set up the environment. You should have a simple contribution guide to set the expectations of what you expect from people doing your PRs. And you should be ready to spend tons of time on documentation. Really, it's like horrible to write so long. And you always find some typos and issues. It's so much time to really explain what you mean and how to use a utility, and to try to see it from their eyes. Like, they don't understand your solution. They have no idea what it does. They want to understand, and you need to write it in simple words and to explain the use case perfectly. And then there's the major issue of getting the word out, because you can have the best project, but nobody is going to use it.
Right.
So
can I ask a different question? When you were putting this project together, Ran, what was the hardest engineering challenge you had to solve when you were doing it?
I guess well, most of these things I was familiar with, just getting it done. But I think the unknown issue here that I have was the GitHub Actions, working with CDK and pipenv and playing all together nicely, because
Right.
When I Googled it up, I didn't find anybody who wrote something about GitHub Actions and pipenv and CDK. So I had to figure it out and spend some, I don't know, like one weekend to get all the things sorted. Because at one point it would work locally on my machine, but then in the GitHub it wouldn't work. So that's the most difficult thing, I'd guess, because the other things I'm doing it works. So it's just just getting it, just writing it and making it more simpler and easy to read.
Cool. No, that's good, because I think it's what
Good
I
advice.
always like to ask that project, because most open source projects come from a place where they're trying to solve a problem, right? And in that journey, you think it's going to be straightforward, but there's always some interesting challenges along the way, and you never know quite what those challenges are going to be. So and everyone has different challenges, right? So it's great to hear from you that that was what you took time to overcome. So thanks for sharing that, Ran.
Thank you.
So Derek, I think that's
Yep.
that. Well, first of all, Ran, thank you very much for going through.
Thank you, Ran. Yes.
That was awesome.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, thank you.
No worries. If people are still online, we're still on for the next sort of 8-9 minutes. If you've got any questions for Ran, please use your time now. But I think, Derek, we're ready for the next transition, which is the kind of the closing.
We have to hit the bell.
Going back to the raffle. So,
Well,
we have a transition for that. Do we have?
No, I've got to get this.
That's it. So everyone, as we close on the show, I just want to come back to the raffle. So just to clear up the confusion, these are not AWS credit codes. Okay, when you complete the raffles and swag link, it says that these are AWS credits. These are not AWS credits. You cannot use these within your AWS account to redeem them. Okay, so if you're doing that, then apologies. I should have made it clearer. But these are just these are raffle codes, as if you would. But they're digital raffle codes. So this is how it's going to work. You're going to click on the link. Okay, you're going to complete a very short survey. Okay, it's 5 or 6 questions, and it's going to give you a code like this one here that's on the screen. Okay, now you need to keep that code. Whatever you do, screenshot it, save it, but that is your raffle ticket. So, when I go to a raffle, I make sure that I put it in my wallet, because I want to make sure, because I've got the winning ticket normally, but then I throw it away because it never wins. So keep that number. Okay, keep that number. Now, what's going to happen is that in January, when we have the next edition of the newsletter, I'm going to publish the winning ticket. So from people who have actually got the tickets, we're going to publish the winning number, and we will only publish though the first 4 blocks of numbers. Okay, we will publish that on the newsletter. If you've got a match, then send us a message. If it matches, you're a winner. Okay, so it's as simple as that. Is that simple, Derek?
It sounds really simple. So if I can summarize, you fill in.
Summarize away.
You follow the link that I put in the chat. You fill in a very short survey. You get a code, right? And then you use the code. What do you do with the code? Once you've got it, because this is where the confusion is happening. You just
put it in AWS Console. Do not redeem it in AWS Console. It's not a credit.
Don't put it in the database console, and then keep the code. Save it somewhere nice and safe, right? And then in the next blog, which you write, and I'll put the links to where all the blogs are in January, you will publish the results of the raffle, and it'll be the code. And if your code matches, you are a winner.
You are a winner, and you'll get all that swag that I shared. It's all yours. I will contact you. I will ask for your shipping address, and
your sound is going, Rick, a little bit, but that's fine.
Oh no, not again.
so
I had audio meltdown last time.
Yep. Are you using Bluetooth again?
No, I'm not. I've got a Yeti. It's all wired in, so I'm not sure what's happening. So apologies for that.
So that's the raffle, folks. So I hope that makes sense. If it did not make sense, I will stay on the chat and explain it again after we've finished the show. Rick.
Okay. Sounds good. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, but you're very distorted and you're echoing, and it sounds like you've got a loose connection. Have you got to check a connection somewhere? What connections have you got for your microphone? Try that.
Okay. This
That's
is
better.
the first. Okay, well,
Oh,
I don't know what I've done there.
there you go.
The magic.
Yes.
The
You've
magic of
worked
the
the Santa
reset.
magic in your Santa hat.
Yeah.
Well done.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. So
Right.
I think with that, I want to thank everyone in 2022 who've watched the shows. We're going to be back in 2023 with more shows. If you are an open source builder and you want to appear on the show, then please reach out. We would love to have you on the show. Already, I've got a few people who are interested. We've got a great lineup for 2023, but we want more people. I'm not sure when we're going to start in the new year, but it's probably going to be late January. But to give us time for some rest and recuperation, Derek.
Yes.
But with that, I want to say,
Robot.
Rand, thank you very much for
Thanks
for your for coming on the show and talking about Lambda, your Lambda handler cookbook. Awesome project. If you want to know more about it, we've shared the links. We've got a repo has got all Rand's information, all the links that he shared today. So we'll be sharing that, and we'll be sharing it on social afterwards in case you missed those. So again, Rand, thank you very much for taking the time to come and speak on the show. Very, very much appreciate it. We will be sending you an Open Source Builders Medal. So for those people who
Yes,
this is the real reason
why
the medal, right?
nice.
So we will be sending that to you in the new year, because at the moment in the UK, the Royal Post Office is suffering some severe meltdown. But yeah, it's striking. And with that, Derek, any last words for 2022?
No, everybody out there, thanks for listening to the show. I hope if you're a repeat viewer of this show, I hope you've enjoyed it. We always want to listen and hear your feedback and what you'd like to see in 2023. But for us, it's absolutely a pleasure to do this with all the people that we meet on the show, including Rand today. So thanks everybody for watching, and have a excellent break if you're having a break over the next couple of weeks. I know Rick, you are. Other than that, I think that's it for 2022.
Awesome. Good luck. So have a great break, everyone, and see you bigger, better, and badder in 2023.
better and better. Sorry, Rick, you'll have to do the bell, or else I'm not doing the outro.